It's 6 p.m. on a Friday here in Korea. I'm Daniel Che. Let's start with the headlines. With the extended Seollal or Lunar New Year holidays less than 24 hours away, the mass exodus of families begin their journeys in and out of the capital to visit loved ones. President Park Geun-hye stopped by the same traditional market in Incheon she visited while leading the Saenury Party 4 years ago, pledging further support for the already revamped markets. An emergency defense meeting is held with South Korea's defense chief ordering troops to be ready to respond to any threats from North Korea after the regime's announcement of plans to launch a rocket sometime this month. Let's begin with the holiday mass exodus. It has already begun in Korea. Heavy traffic congestion is expected as people are finishing work to leave the city early. Let's connect to our Kim Hyun-bin, who is standing by at the Seoul station downtown. Hyun-bin, it's that time of the year again.
That's right, Daniel. I'm here out in Seoul Station, and it's pretty packed, filled with people trying to get back to their families and loved ones. Now, more than 36 million people are expected to transport by trains, planes, and automobiles. And heavy traffic started about 2-3 hours ago. And it's a little past 6 p.m. Here in Korea, and bumper-to-bumper congestion is now just getting started as more people are hitting the roads soon after work. Now, officials expect the congestions to continue through midnight, peaking on Sunday morning, a day before the Lunar New Year. And an estimated 5.3 million people will be heading to their hometowns on that day alone. Now, from Seoul, it's expected to take about 2 hours and 40 minutes to Daejeon, 4 hours 30 minutes to Daegu, and 5 hours and 20 minutes to Busan on average from Friday to Sunday. Now, returning traffic is expected to peak on Monday afternoon. While some 2.8 million people are expected to board trains, the Korea Railroad Corporation has deployed about 150 additional KTX bullet trains and 150 regular trains to reduce overcrowding from Monday to Wednesday. Now, with long driving hours ahead, motorists are advised to keep vehicles well ventilated. Now, coffee or tea always helps to drive away drowsiness, and chewing gum has also been proven effective to stay alert. Back to you.
All right, Hyun-bin, thank you for those updates and those very handy tips. Moving on, ahead of the Lunar New Year holiday, President Park Geun-hye paid a visit to a traditional market, pledging vendors with further policy supports and encouraging the public to make more frequent visits to now revamped markets. Song Ji-san has more on her visit.
As millions of Koreans begin their journey to meet their families for the Seollal or Lunar New Year holiday, President Park stopped by a traditional market in Incheon, west of the capital. The president's visit to the Jeongseojin Jungang Traditional Market this time is even more special, as this was the same market she visited 4 years ago when she was leading the ruling Saenury Party. The market is also among the traditional venues that have been revamped with modern technologies, both in facilities and marketing, thanks to the government's efforts to merge cultural content to enhance consumers' shopping experience. Now powered by solar panels, the market offers cultural classes to local residents. In addition, the government provides various benefits for traditional markets, like voucher programs and tax deduction advantage for consumers. It is also cheaper to shop at these traditional markets for ingredients needed to set the table for ancestral memorial ceremonies, a staple tradition in Seollal, costing an average of $150 this year, or 20% less than buying at large supermarkets. Pledging continued support in policies that can help revitalize traditional markets, President Park stressed the importance that cultural content has to attract more consumers and help turn traditional markets into leading examples of creative economy. Song Ji-sun, Arirang News.
Shifting gears now, amid rising tensions regarding North Korea's nuclear provocation, President Park Geun-hye has named an intelligence aide as the #2 official in Seoul's spy agency. Kim Jin-sup, an official at the Presidential Office of National Security, is set to lead the Overseas Department, which includes North Korean affairs. The Presidential Office said that Kim, who headed the North Korean department at the NIS, is the right person for the job as tensions continue to escalate on the Korean peninsula following Pyongyang's announcement of plans for a long-range missile launch. Park also tapped Choi Yun-soo, a senior prosecutor in the Busan office, as head of domestic intelligence at the spy agency. South Korea's defense minister convened an emergency meeting to prepare for any situation following North Korea's announced long-range ballistic missile launch. Seoul believes Pyongyang has made significant progress in launch preparations as the timeline to carry it out notified by the regime starts next week. Connie Kim gives us the updates.
Respond actively to North Korea's long-range ballistic missile launch was what South Korea's Defense Minister Han Min-gu ordered on Friday as North Korea gears up for its long-range rocket launch. The South Korean defense chief also commanded military troops to be on standby in case of any unusual activity in an emergency meeting of senior military officials.
North Korea could launch a long-range ballistic missile at any time besides the notified period. Thus, you must do your best to detect and identify any unusual movement by Pyongyang.
South Korea, along with the international community, has been on high alert as North Korea on Wednesday said it'll launch what it calls an Earth observation satellite sometime between February 8th and the 25th, a timeline that was notified to UN agencies as well. And due to the proximity of the date given by the regime, Seoul believes Pyongyang has made significant progress on its rocket launch preparations. There have been speculations that the long-range rocket assembly has been completed and it'll soon be erected at the launch pad. Adding weight to Pyongyang's long-range ballistic missile launch preparations, Japanese Asahi Shimbun reported North Korea seems to have started injecting fuel in its long-range rocket. On Thursday, Japanese Kyodo News Agency reported signs of movement of a vehicle equipped with a missile launch pad located in an underground facility. South Korean military on its side is preparing for any emergency situations, carrying out live fire tests for its Chunmu, a multiple launch rocket system that can fire both 130mm caliber and 230mm caliber rockets. Experts predict Pyongyang will conduct its long-range ballistic missile launch within a week's time, disregarding calls from the international community to halt any further provocations. Connie Kim, Arirang News.
With the continued threat posed by North Korea, Seoul's Foreign Minister Yoon Byung-se met with 4 foreign envoys in Seoul Friday to discuss appropriate measures against Pyongyang for its recent provocations. And according to our Kwon So-ah, the focal point, to no surprise, was tougher sanctions.
North Korea's so-called Pyeongjin line, its ambitions of developing nuclear weapons and its economy simultaneously, will never succeed. That's the consensus of Seoul's Foreign Minister Yoon Byung-se and ambassadors to South Korea from the US, Japan, Australia and the EU as they gathered at Seoul's Foreign Ministry Friday to discuss ways to deal with North Korea's nuclear test last month, as well as its most recent announcement of a satellite launch widely believed to be ruse for a missile test. They vowed the strongest sanctions to date.
In regards to additional sanctions from each country, Minister Yoon and the ambassadors assessed all related fields, including weapons of mass destruction, and decided on multi-dimensional and multi-level sanction measures.
The most powerful measure is known to be the one discussed at the UN Security Council, still waiting to be adopted.
After Pyongyang's third nuclear test, China was very cooperative and quick to vote in favor of a new resolution. But it's taking longer this time as Beijing and Washington are struggling to see eye to eye.
This as the U.S. is seeking much stronger sanctions than China is willing to approve. According to an official at Seoul's Foreign Ministry, there are currently a number of possible scenarios regarding the content of the new resolution, all dependent upon if and when North Korea launches a rocket. The official says if Pyongyang does conduct a missile test, a supplementary revision of the UN's resolution against the North's nuke test would be a more likely option than drafting a totally new one, which seems to indicate significant progress towards the adoption of new sanctions. Kwon So-ah, Arirang News.
South Korean lawmakers vowed to keep close tabs on the North for any signs of a secretive rocket launch. Kim Young-gil shares with us this rare occasion when rival parties automatically see eye to eye, a unified condemnation of the regime.
The ruling Saenuri Party on Friday said South Korea's military should be on alert and coordinate with the international community to prevent the North from making a terrible mistake.
The government should thoroughly monitor North Korea for its possible launch of long-range missiles and maintain military readiness. We also call for close cooperation with the international community and diplomatic efforts to thwart any provocations from the North.
The ruling party also called for stern military readiness with enhanced capacity to respond preemptively to the North missiles, and urged the adoption of strong sanctions with the cooperation of the international community. The main opposition Minju Party also condemned the communist regime, saying the party will not tolerate such actions.
North Korea's notification of an imminent missile launch has sparked insecurity on the Korean peninsula. The North should stop violating UN Security Council resolutions and jeopardizing South Korea's national security.
The Minju Party added that if Pyongyang goes ahead with its ballistic missile test, it will be another obstacle to Korean unification. The minor opposition People's Party also urged Pyongyang to refrain from its plans, saying that it would only exacerbate international tensions. South Korean politicians vowed to make an all-out effort to convince Pyongyang to abort its plans for a missile test and urged the government to take steps to ensure the safety of the people. Kim Young-gil, Arirang News.
Now, despite the sluggish recovery momentum, Korea managed to return to a budget surplus in 2015 after 3 straight years of deficits. Tax revenue was boosted thanks to government stimulus measures and a hike in cigarette taxes. Hwang Ji-hye tells us more.
Korea's budget balance last year ended in the black, marking the first surplus in 4 years. The finance ministry says the country collected roughly $300 billion in revenue, putting the gap with expenditure at around $2.5 billion. The surplus came as the government managed to push up its tax revenue last year by about $2 billion compared to the amount designated in the budget. This is in stark contrast with a roughly $10 billion deficit posted a year earlier. The upswing in tax receipts was led by improved domestic consumption and a busy real estate market thanks to government stimulus measures, while a tax law revision that nearly doubled cigarette prices also played a big part. The government laid out an aggressive set of stimulus measures last year that included boosting home transactions and introducing major sales events. Customs duties, however, slumped by around $180 million compared to the previous year after seeing sluggish imports due to plunging oil prices. Income tax revenue from interest rates also dropped as the country's key rate is at a record low of 1.5%. Hwang Ji-hye, Arirang News.
The IMF is looking to strengthen precautionary financing instruments to counter continuing low oil and commodities prices. IMF Managing Director Christine Lagarde called for a stronger global financial safety net in order to limit the negative effects of the low prices and China's slowdown. She said advanced economies should support growth through infrastructure spending and other steps. Lagarde urged emerging economies to boost non-commodity revenues and allow more flexible exchange rate policies, while suggesting the U.S. clearly communicate its plans to raise rates with other countries. Central banks around the world are devaluing their currencies to keep themselves competitive. Korea has been no exception, cutting its rate to a record low 1.5% over the past year or so. And analysts say further cuts could be on the horizon soon. For the digits and more, we turn to our Park Se-young.
The global currency war is intensifying, with central banks in various countries following China's movement to weaken their local currencies. According to Bloomberg, the People's Bank of China cut the yuan midpoint by 0.22% in January after having devalued its local currency by nearly 5% in just 4 days last August. The PBOC did on Thursday raise the yuan fixing by 0.16% to fight off bearish sentiments. The Bank of Japan recently adopted a negative interest rate strategy, which will in effect drive down the yen. The European Central Bank, having rolled out a negative rate policy in 2014, is likely to cut its interest rates again in March. Global investment banks are extending their forecast of the Bank of Korea lowering its benchmark interest rate within the first 3 months of a year. Speculation of a rate cut at this month's policy meeting rose sharply after the BOJ's interest rate announcement, following concerns of a Korean won appreciating against the yen and hurting exporters. Korea's exports shrank 18.5% on-year in January, the biggest drop since 2009. But the country's heavy household debt and the potential of a faster outflow of foreign capital are factors that could prevent the BOK from lowering rates further. Park Se-young, Arirang News.
Well, Brazil, already in the midst of Zika outbreak, faced a grave challenge of preventing further spread of the virus during its carnival holiday that begins Friday, as well as the Summer Olympics coming up in August. The first Zika infection is reported in Spain. The pregnant woman recently returned from a trip to Colombia. For details, we turn to Kim Mo-kyun.
It's thought to be the first such case in Europe. The woman is said to be in her second trimester of pregnancy and was under medical supervision. She is described as being in good health, but details on the condition of her unborn child have not been released. The woman is now among the 7 people identified as having Zika in Spain. Spain's health ministry has moved to reassure the public, saying all the cases were contracted overseas. International efforts to cope with Zika are ongoing in various fields, especially in the tourism sector. Italy's largest airline, Alitalia, says it's offering a no-penalty fee for pregnant women and their fellow travelers who wish to change flight schedules or cancel their trips to countries affected by Zika. Destinations where the Zika virus has been found include Brazil and other Caribbean and Latin American countries. Korea's land ministry has also announced that pregnant passengers will temporarily be exempt from flight cancellation fees if they have tickets to Zika-affected countries. Korean Air, Asiana Airlines, and the nation's low-cost carriers will not receive any cancellation fees for flights scheduled from February 1st to April 30th. Jin Air and T-Way Air have further expanded the scope of the exemption to routes to Bangkok and Phuket, Malaysia's Kota Kinabalu, and Vietnam's Ho Chi Minh. Kim Mo-kyun, Arirang News.
That's all from us at this hour. As always, thank you for watching.